A risk of bad is the four most expensive words in the human language. While you're at it,
I'm gonna chill down, protect me from the where CTOs share the tales and the comments. So start a few big names and the visions unfold. How many CTOs will share the stories untold?
hey Brad, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Scott?
Good. Do you want to record a podcast?
Yeah, let's do it.
What should we call it?
How many CTOs does it take?
That's right. This is the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast. My name is Scott Porad, and this is my trusty co-host,
Brad Hefta-Gaub.
Brad. I've got a question for you today
Yes, tell me.
that has nothing to do with AI.
Okay, good.
It might have something to do with AI, possibly, but I don't think it does.
All right, I'm
I'm
listening.
sure AI will come up. I want to know what you think of the bad strategy versus the fad strategy.
I'm gonna have to learn more about both of those strategies before I can answer.
That's right. Let me tell you. Okay, so there is a part of the system at the company I work at that the company wants to refactor. Well, it doesn't want to refactor at all. It wants some new functionality in that system. And in order to get it there, really the code needs to be refactored. Okay. It's a tangled mess as it is now because it's been hacked on for a lot of years. And they want to add a lot of complexity. Basically, to keep it really simple, imagine if it's a one-to-one relationship now and they want it to be a many-to-many. It's all tangled and they're just going to make it more tangled. And so they're on board with they want to do this and they want us to invest the time to refactor it. We've been able to make that case, no problem. And a lot of this is actually, we don't use the language refactor, we use the language modernize. So that's an issue. But let's set that aside. Okay, so of course you can't go down this pathway without having the conversation. Should we start it over from scratch?
Second
And
system.
of course we entertain that idea for a week or so, and then we're like, this is nuts. We're not going to write it over from scratch. We need to refactor it. Okay.
Right.
So now there's two possible ways you could, well, there maybe are many possible ways you could refactor this, but there are two that I am currently debating.
Sure.
Let me tell you about the bad strategy and the fad strategy.
Okay.
They're acronyms.
Okay.
BADD is BADD, and it stands
okay.
for Better Architecture Driven Development.
Okay.
And FAD is also an acronym, but it's not a very good acronym because it doesn't have all the right letters, but for having a pithy choice, it fit. And FAD is feature-driven development.
Mhm.
There's no A in it.
It's FDD.
FAD. It is FDD, but I threw that. It's really okay. Well, so let's talk about these things. FAD is, I think, what we commonly do, which is we say, okay, we want this system to work in this new way, so we're gonna refactor it. As we add these capabilities to the system, we are going to refactor along the way so that we deliver the thing that we want to deliver. The bad strategy says, no, refactor that thing and just make it work good the way it is. And then after it's been refactored, add your new capabilities on top of it.
Okay.
Now, I want to know what you think. Are you a bad guy or a fad guy? And I know your answer, which is it depends. So upon what does it depend?
I don't know.
Or should we just explore the pros and cons of bad
Let's
and fad?
explore the pros and cons because I'm not sure.
Let me give one more piece of context.
Yeah, sure.
I have always been a fad guy.
I've never felt like I've been asked this question before. So
Yeah.
I was taking a moment to check in with myself.
Okay.
To sort of like, wait, what do I think about? Like I
Yeah.
definitely couldn't just like shoot from the hip on this one. I had to check
well,
in.
Let me give you some more context. So I've always been a fad guy. If you're going to refactor, you refactor in a direction, and the direction is toward the capabilities that you want. But I was challenged on that in the last couple of weeks by the funniest of people, by the CEO and the chief product officer of the company.
Yeah, right.
I wasn't quite challenged. They didn't intentionally challenge me. They just said, well, why are you doing it that way? Why aren't you going to modernize it first and then build it the new stuff on top second. That seems like it would be easier. And I explained all the reasons why you don't do that, right? Because this gives us, actually need to take a step further back. I've been pounding the table like, hey, if you want us to refactor this thing, we need some product requirements.
Right.
We need to know, and not just like product requirements for this little tweak you want us to make, but like long term, where do you want to go with this new
Right.
set of capabilities you want us to add
Mhm.
here? So we can start building in that direction. They've been saying, why do you want to know that? Aren't you just gonna, you're just modernizing it, right? And then after you're done modernizing it, then we'll add the new capabilities on. And then I explained, well, no, we need to do this in a direction. If I give the engineers a blank check, they're just gonna fix a bunch of stuff and we're not going to get anywhere. And, I
Well,
mean, the engineers would love to do it that way, but that's not the best way for the business. But then I thought to myself, I mean, these two individuals are not dumb. They're executives at a pretty big company.
yeah, totally.
I should reflect upon that for a second. Is there something I am missing?
Yeah.
Why am I a fad guy and not a bad guy? And so I've got some further thoughts on that. I can tell you, I
Well,
can lay more out, but it seems like you got some thoughts.
yeah, so I've had time to check in with myself.
Great. Let's hear it.
I feel like the very first reaction that I had, well, actually, when you said I've always been a fad guy, that was
Mm-hmm.
like a little thing went off in my brain going, yeah, I think I've always been a fad guy too.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was like, okay, why? Why is that? I mean, the better architecture driven development, like that feels like second system. That's like screaming second system to me. And it's funny, I actually have this memory. Oh my God, this is so long ago. This is 20 years ago at Real Networks. More than 20 years ago because I've been gone for more than 20 years. But I remember there was a point where essentially one of the dev teams kind of was like, we're going to rewrite everything. And they were kind of like this little, kind of pirate group, they were kind of like they had their leader, their VP level leader was like, screw everybody else, we can do it our own way. And they basically effectively made a bad a better architecture argument. Like stuff has changed since this code was written. There's better ways to do this. It's become this big monolith. Why don't we start over and build the small thing? And they got a demo working of the top veneer of the features that mattered. Just enough to kind of like keep the momentum going. And then they got stuck in the churn of trying to build all the new features. So it was like a classic second system effect.
Yeah, that's second system. I don't think that's what bad is. Bad is not second system. But
Well,
here's what I envision bad being.
okay, tell me.
Okay, you've got a monolith. You're gonna decompose this into, well, let's not even decompose it. You've got a monolith with a bunch of spaghetti code. We're just gonna go in there and like we got these methods that are 2,000 lines long and that are recursive and that are all messy, and we're just gonna refactor this code. It's not, we don't want it to do anything differently than it does today. We just want it to be easier to work with. We've got a monolith, a bunch of code in a giant repo with millions of lines of code. We're going to decompose this into, let's just say, half a dozen different macro services, and they're going to talk to each other through some communication mechanism. And so now we'll have smaller footprint to finish with. So we'll just have with a better architecture. We're going to document our APIs. We're going to
Yeah,
have
right.
APIs. So we get all these things.
Yeah, but hold on a second. So like when I hear someone say, let's do a better architecture, I hear that, and even when I hear you, like, it'd be one thing if it's like I mean, I'm dealing with this with one of the teams that I'm working with where we've got just a file that's like 3,000 lines long, and it's like, oh my God, like who let this file get so big? Well, let's start peeling pieces out of it, and you end up changing. Like, of course, you're not trying to change the behavior, but when you like are like, hey, this file has become monolithic, itself is too big. Let's pull out the helper classes. Let's pull out a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of these functions and make them tiny little helper classes instead, right? Like maybe I guess are you saying that's not second system, but that's better
Yeah,
architecture. Is that
that'd be an example of refactoring in order to make the code better. Don't get too hung up on the word architecture. I mean, I had to come up with some pithy names for these
I
things,
see.
right? But like you're basically saying to the team, look, we want to make this code. Right now, you're saying it takes a long time to build things because the code is a ball of mud, right?
Yeah.
It's your spaghetti code.
Why don't you just
Fine.
go in
We're
and
going to spend a bunch of
unmud it?
time in making it. What's that?
Unmud it.
Yeah, we're going to unmud it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make the messy things unmessy. We're going to make the spaghetti untangled, and we're going to make it a lot easier. And then after we've done that for a while, we'll define what good looks like there. But um, after we've done that, then we'll go. Now it should be easier to work with, right? Then we'll go add in the stuff that the business wants.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. I'm feeling I'm feeling uneasy about this. You sort of said something a few minutes ago that I think is maybe the articulation of what I'm feeling uneasy about. You said something like, if I don't give the developers a direction, they're just gonna go do stuff that
Yeah,
is not necessarily, it just maybe makes
I
them
mean,
feel better.
yeah. Like, well, if let's go back to what are we trying to accomplish?
Yeah. I mean,
Two things.
you said something earlier about what the business goal was.
Yeah.
That it's like essentially pivoting from like a one-to-one relationship to a many-to-many relationship.
That's not really what it is. That's just using an illustration of like,
Okay.
imagine you had some complex thing and then that's what they wanted to do, right? You'd be like, oh my God, we're going to just make this a really tangled ball of mud. No, what's practically happening is the business is saying we want this capability. Engineering is saying, okay, it's going to take you this long to get that. Business is saying that's going to take us too long. How could you get it faster? The engineers are saying, well, if the system wasn't so crappy, we could build it for you faster. Like if we weren't having to deal with this ball of mud,
Yeah.
and the business is saying, cool, fix the ball of mud.
Fix the bell of mud.
Great. Yep.
Yeah.
They're saying, great, we're happy to have you fix the ball of mud. Because you're gonna have, if it isn't now, it's gonna be the next thing we want. You're gonna have to fix it. So great, fix the ball of mud. And then we've arrived at this question of like, well, how do we fix the ball of mud? And the first question you ask is, well, should we start from scratch? And you entertain that for a little bit until you realize that's a
Yep.
fool's errand. And then you get to the next thing, which I've always taken the FaDD approach, which is like, okay, we're going to define what we want the product to be like, the software to be like. And then as we build towards that, we'll refactor along the way to make it less muddy. And I was I use the word challenged. I mean, I was the one who took the challenge. I don't think they meant to challenge me. They were just
Yeah,
asking,
totally.
like,
Why are you
we
doing it
thought you were
that
going
way?
to do. Well, they didn't even say why. They were just like, I assumed you were going to do it this way. Why are you doing it? Yeah, I assumed you were going to do it this other way. Like just because I'm
Modernize
a
it, then add features.
yeah, right.
Well, I want to try to like I think this is a super interesting question, and I feel like it's worth me challenging why am I uneasy about this? Like what am I uneasy about? And I think maybe like let's go down this better architecture driven design approach for a second. Let's go down that. Let's try to
Let's talk
explore
about the
what
pros and cons.
well, no, before we talk about the pros and cons,
Okay.
let's make sure we're clear on what that would look like. I'm
Yeah.
feeling,
Okay.
I'm kind of feeling a little, my kinesthetic learning brain is kicking into full gear here, and I'm like, what would this look like and feel like? What would this mean? Like,
Here's
what
what
would
I
we?
think it would look like.
Yeah, yeah, tell me.
It would. I mean, I don't have the definitive answer, but I think these are some things that it would look like. It would have it, at the architecture layer. It would take the monolith and break it into, let's just say, half a dozen major chunks of meaningful domains, and those chunks would communicate via messages with each other. At the code layer, it would look like, let's just call it fixing a lot of the unbest practice, the worst practices, right? Getting rid of taking the 3,000 line files and fixing them, those kinds of things at the code layer. This is a system that has a lot of, it's written in Ruby, and Ruby it uses a Ruby on Rails. And so it has this active record spawns these events, on save and on update and on these things. And people have tapped into those, and it makes navigating the code very complex.
Yeah,
And so maybe you straighten some of that stuff up so that people who are trying to reason about how the system works, it might not be taking advantage of all the Ruby and Ruby on Rails magic, but it would be, for a large team of
right.
developers, it would be easier to reason about. You would write documentation or have AI write documentation for you so that people understood how the things work. You do those kinds of things. You maybe would refactor some of your databases, like or database. Well, you'd certainly, as you broke at the architectural level, as you broke your system into domains, you'd separate out your data. But even within a given domain, when you're refactoring code, you might say, look, the way these tables are constructed isn't is inefficient, or it doesn't make sense anymore. I think ultimately, so what are you trying to do? Like conceptually, what you're trying to do is make it faster for engineers to develop. Strategically, what you're saying is if I can create smaller components, and within those components, they can follow more of the best practices, all the things from test automation on down, that then it'll be easier and faster for engineers to get things done.
Right.
That's the
Okay.
idea.
Okay. Cool. So that's that sounds like a really good answer. Uh, what pops into my mind is, for example, I was working with this, my the team I spend almost all my time with is a team that we recently were like, God, we've got these 3,000 line files. We should figure this out. We should basically like modularize this stuff. And so as a team, we wrote up like a working agreement, to use your language, about code modularization. And we're like guiding principles, single responsibility principle, low coupling, high cohesion, maintainability, testability, right? So we like
Mm-hmm.
wrote up a working agreement there. And I could totally imagine a world where maybe you already have those like coding standards or kind of architecture, because to me, right, like this is like totally giving the conversation that we had with Ted Neward about like um look, there are no such things as best practices. There's just practices that as a team you've agreed to, right?
Sure.
And so the first step is like, okay, do we have working agreements on all of our what good architecture looks like, what better architecture looks like? And then I could totally imagine a world where like you basically get a whole bunch of like we're all aligned on these what better architecture looks like, and then we essentially go on a module by module basis, component by component basis, file by file basis, and we somehow like score it and say, yep, this one is not meeting our definition of better architecture. Ted, you get to go re-implement this file to have single responsibility principle. And
Sure.
Ted gets to own, whatever scale task that is for that file, or
Mm-hmm.
or work through it. Is that kind of what
Yeah,
what
could be
this would
something
look
like
like?
that. Or you could take it from the perspective of pain points. You could ask your team, well, what makes it hard? And they might say, well, the fact that we have files that have 10 different concepts in them makes it really confusing to figure out how stuff works. So maybe, so you could take it from that perspective. Like, there's a lot of ways you could get to, and then like Ted said, you just agree on what you want to agree on, whatever the best practice is, that we're going to single responsibility, or no files bigger than 1,000 lines, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
Tabs, not spaces,
Yeah, totally.
spaces, not tabs.
Well, I'm also a big believer that anything that can be enforced with lint and prettier, we should just
Sure.
enforce with lint and prettier.
Well, I was just
Like,
joking about the tabs and
sh-
spaces thing, but yeah, I think that's exactly the approach you would take. And it seems like, what are the pros? It's really like you can determine if it was done correctly, meaning does the system work the same way it worked before? You're
that's fair.
not you're not trying to do two things at once. You're just trying to do, there's some of the interesting things about software, or some of our principles of software engineering, like, only try to do one thing at a time. Don't make a commit that does two things, make a commit that does one thing so it's easy. Well, fundamentally, with FaDD, we're trying to do two things at a time. With BADD,
Yeah.
we're trying to do one thing at a time, right? Those are pros.
I would argue that there's a step that both these approaches require, which is your first step,
Mhm.
which is alignment on what the better architecture is. So maybe,
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like if you really are going to do FAD correctly, then you do have to agree on the better architecture before you even start building new features.
absolutely.
Because you said you were going to build the new features with the better architecture. So
Well, so you have to agree on the architecture on both sides, but on one side, you don't have to agree on the product requirements.
that's fair.
You just need to make sure you don't break it.
And were you partly inspired by this? Because I think the way you told the story was that you're like, yeah, okay, let's go down this road. By the way, we need to know what your vision and product requirements are.
Yeah, I've
And
been
they were like,
pushing on
well,
the
wait,
product
why do you need that?
requirements.
Why do you need that?
I,
Don't you want to like
I've been,
modernize it?
yeah, that's exactly right. I've been saying we can't get started until we write the requirements. And they've been like, well, why? I thought you were modernizing it first. I was like, well, yeah, we are modernizing it, but we need to know like what we're working toward. And they're like, well, don't you modernize first and then we add on the stuff we want? And I explained, oh, no, that's not why you do it. Because, you know, if we do it this other way, we get the business value faster because maybe you get some incremental gains along the way, and we get the scope right so that we're not building stuff that doesn't matter. And
But then they're
you
arguing,
know,
okay, yeah, so I agree, obviously I agree with all that stuff, and that's why
yeah,
knowing the direction you're going, because there's always six ways to do something, all of which are not wrong, but
right.
one of them is gonna, some of those will improve your chances of doing the future thing, and others will make it harder to do the future thing.
Yeah, and I made the argument like, hey, it's like you're asking me to, hey, you want to add 2 bedroom? Yeah, I got this old rundown house, and I want to update the whole house and add on 2 bedrooms. And you're asking me to update the whole house, and then once that's all done, have the
Then
construction
add
crew come back
the
and add the 2 bedrooms, and nobody would do that, right?
right.
So here's a few other
But
thoughts.
but they also but I guess if we're using our house renovation analogy, it wouldn't be wrong to say, but wait, you just told me there was knob and tube wiring all over the existing infrastructure, and you're like, that's not modern. Let's put true new modern electrical in. You could
Yeah,
certainly do that to the part that's standing, even though we haven't done the design on the new addition.
yeah, you could. Um, Unless you thought, well, I used the, let's actually not use an addition because that's not what we're talking about here, by the way, as an addition. We're talking about remodeling the layout of the house
Oh,
or
going from
remodeling the
we're
kitchen.
going for
This is
to
actually,
open floor plan.
well, actually, let's do it this way. We want to totally update this kitchen, make it modern, new appliances, the best in refrigeration that you can possibly have. And then after it's done, we're going to get rid of all that and we're going to come in and put in a new kitchen with like an island and a better cutting board and all sorts of stuff, right? That's
Right.
kind of what it is.
Yeah, that would be
Okay,
rad.
so here's just 2 other thoughts that have come across my head. A risk of bad is the 4 most expensive words in the human language. While you're at it,
Yep.
and so one risk of fad is that your
Or
business
what
doesn't
is
have
this?
the
Is
discipline. I'm sorry,
wait.
bad.
Yeah.
A
Okay.
risk of bad is that your company doesn't have the discipline to actually do it, right?
Yeah. So you end up
We've seen
fatting.
you end up fatting, but you end up fatting without good requirements because your engineers have got the patient open and they're like, oh, and now you want me to stick in the new refrigerator? This okay? Well, I guess I'll just hack this in here. Right? That's one risk. Another risk is so you do it. You're the end of the modernization. The house, the kitchen, it's all sweet, and the business is like, well, what did I get for that? Well, now we can build stuff faster. Okay, cool. Now I want you to build this new thing. Okay, well, that's going to take 8 months. Well, I thought it was going to be a lot faster than that. Well, before it was
Right.
going to be 18 months. Now it's going to be 8 months. They're like, yeah, but I wanted it like in 2 or 3 months,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Totally.
there's
Totally.
there's a risk
I
that
think that's your biggest risk. Like you might have oversold how much easier this is. Some stuff's
I
just
haven't
hard to do.
sold it at all. I don't know. I literally couldn't tell you how much faster it's going to go
No. No.
because
No. I
I
just mean
don't know what you want me to build.
right. 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 Yes. That's yes. 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 I think that like yeah, man. I
Okay, wait, here's
mean,
another wrinkle.
okay. Tell me.
Is it possible that we, and I said like almost every person I've talked to about this has said fad. I mean, every engineering leader has said fad. Is it possible?
That's where I felt the pull to.
It's totally where I go to. Totally where it's okay, but is it because of this? I have never been able to successfully sell bad to the business stakeholders.
Yeah,
And in the occasions that I have,
you're like,
like it's been a little disappointing, but they never buy into that because they're like, well, what am I going to get for my money? And you're like, you're going to
right.
get faster stuff. How much faster? I don't really know. They're like, no, we're not going to do that. So in order to actually do modernizations in my career, I've had to learn the technique of FAD, which is okay,
Yeah,
you want this thing, we're going to add a tax to this thing, which is doing the modernization work because you can't remodel the kitchen without doing the knob and tube wiring. So we're out of tech. And so we've learned how to do FAD because it was actually the only way that we could do the modernization
Modernization.
because we couldn't ever quantify or express the value of the modernization. And I now find myself in a unique
Your bluff has
situation.
been called.
It's not even a bluff. It's just like I'm not having to sell it. They're actually saying, why aren't you taking it? And I was so thrown for a loop. I was like, well, wait a second. Why aren't I taking it?
Right. Why aren't you
So I
taking
wonder
it?
if it's just like I'm scarred. I got like, wounded puppy, abused puppy syndrome.
Right. 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 Um, we're just trying to give you some wet food. I don't know what you're so skittish about.
Right. And so here's another puzzle piece. As I said, every engineering leader I've talked to, including ones inside my own company, they instantly go to FAD. They were like, well, that's crazy. Because they've all had the same experience that I've had in their careers,
Right.
which is like, oh, bad is terrible. Every time we've ever tried to do bad, every time we've proposed bad, they shut us down. And even when we do it, they get impatient and cut it off partway through. So we actually never get the value from it. So like
That
we've just
that's like
learned to do
that
FAD.
right there is a real that's a real concern. That
Yeah,
right
it
there is
is
a
a
real
real
concern. You
concern.
get halfway done with the bad and you got nothing, and then they get skittish and stop it. Like that's like I think that's a real legit concern.
As a matter of fact, I have that in two places in our system right now.
Yeah.
Before I started at this company, they went about upgrading from some front end framework to another front end framework. Of course, only finished 2/3 of it. And so now the front end developers are frustrated. They got to deal with both. Not only do they have to deal with the bad one, they have to deal with the bad one and the new one, right? That's the worst of both worlds. And then
Right.
we have a project where we were um, rebuilding, refactoring a key part of the system and wanting to extract it out of the monolith. And their idea was we'll build it inside the monolith first and then extract it out. Well, they finished about 80% of it inside the monolith and then stopped. So now they have this particular subsystem. There's two of them running,
Right.
both inside the monolith, side by side.
Right.
And so first they got to finish it and then they got to extract. And so everybody, on the first case, which was purely bad, they just didn't get finished. The second case was actually FAD, and it didn't get finished. And in this case, you got business stakeholders saying, like, what? Those guys worked on that for like 3 years. You're telling me it's not done?
Yeah, 100% agree with everything you just said. I've seen that happen hundreds of times. It's like, of course, going to happen.
Hundreds.
It's of course going to happen.
Of course.
So the question then is, um, so as we were talking about this earlier, I was imagining, well, maybe what you do is you you do these you agree you come to agreement within the team about what good architecture is, what better architecture is. You stack rank and I love your point, like ask them what's taking them, ask them what's hard, ask them what makes it hard. You stack rank the stuff that's going to make the biggest difference to the developers' productivity and velocity, right? Like that's what this is all about. This is all about, can we make it more high velocity developers, right? Because I'm assuming that you're not dealing with the rickety system that has these hard to constantly falling over bugs, right? But even if you had that, it
Correct.
wouldn't matter. You still do an analysis where you're like, what's the thing that as a team we genuinely believe that if we make progress against these goals, we will have higher velocity?
Yeah.
And then you rank those things. Like which ones do we, to the best of our professional ability, believe are going to make the biggest difference in velocity? Okay. And then you bite size those, and what's the saying? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a
One
time.
bite at a time. Yeah.
And so you've set a set of you've created a punch list, or like a meta punch list that
Mm-hmm.
is that is, to the best of your professional opinion, the thing that's going to increase velocity the fastest. And you start working through that punch list, and each point along the way, you make sure you've hit a checkpoint, that you've made a difference, and then before you move to the next bite, right? And then at any point along the way, you're able to stop. You're able to stop
Yeah.
working on it and move on to back to features.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is if you go down a bad route, you really need to be incremental so that you can stop.
Right.
You need to swarm around things and get them finished, not have many things in flight that are partially finished.
For sure. And then as you're doing that, features can also slot in. So long as the features are done following the better architecture agreements.
Yes.
And
Don't make it
so
worse. Stop,
don't
stop
don't
digging
make
the
it.
hole deeper.
Yeah. And so I sort of was like, that's how that's how I think I would approach it. And I was like, maybe that's something like bad with fad. It's like
It's
it's
a
both it's
it's
bad
a
with
version of
fad.
hybrid. It's a
It's like
version
a
of hybrid.
right.
I had.
It's had, not fad, not
I
bad.
mean, the hybrid I've had in my mind is slightly different, which is there are parts of the system where you might want to do bad. So like that front end framework thing I was just talking about, that was just bad, right? That was just like we used, I don't even know what the frameworks were. Like we used Angular and now we want to use React. Like that's just, I mean, I don't know if that's a trade up or not, but like the it might just be a lateral move.
Whoa,
But
hey, whoa! Don't get the listeners fighting with each other.
yeah, I don't
It's
want to
obviously
not
the
trying to
answer
start a
is
really
obvious. No, it's spelt is obviously the right answer. I mean, come on.
right. So exactly, of course. So I'm not trying to get in a fight here. I'm just trying to say like that's just bad, right? We
Better
just want to
architecture.
better
Yeah.
architecture. Hey, we've got two mobile apps. One of those mobile apps talks to our backend via GraphQL, and the other talks to the backend via REST. You know what? We're going to make them just both talk the same way. I don't care which one, but why do we maintain two interfaces for
Right.
this is silly.
Yep.
Setting aside that you might want a BFF for each app separately, the point is it just adds complexity to the whole thing. I now have to know two things and think about it differently, et cetera. Um, taking that piece of that component that I just mentioned a few minutes ago that's 80% done, just finish it and extract it. Any extractions are just bad. So extractions are just bad. Just take this chunk, extract it. Take this. But there's some pieces, like when we were talking about the one-to-one versus the one-to-many piece earlier, that might be a fad, where we say this piece, actually, we do want new functionality here. And so we're gonna do fad on this one. And let's be intentional about that. Let's not do fad everywhere. Let's do fad where we think it's high leverage or high value.
Yeah, and it's so I feel like there's two pieces of this hybrid strategy that we're kind of coalescing on.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is never just open up the entire system and put everything on, just never take the whole thing apart. You're always going to be on the bad, you're always being incremental, you're thinking about it, you're being intentional about always having stop points and break points. And then that way, if you have to stop your architecture improvement mid investment, you're never left with hanging components.
Mm-hmm.
And then part two, if you've clearly articulated your better architecture agreements, then there's nothing wrong with slotting in an intentional feature.
Or
That
an
is
intentional fad.
all new features definitionally should be
All new features should be fad. Yes.
yeah. You're going to
Yeah,
do
that's right.
all new features as compliant with the new agreed upon better architecture.
Well, that's a very interesting thing. I was talking to one person today, a woman on our team who's one of our leaders, and we were talking about that piece, which is she was we were discussing this topic, and she was saying how she felt like this is all great, but there's this piece of our culture that needs to change, which is, as you summarize it with, is everything is fad. She sort of said, look, we got to get to a situation where people don't make things worse, right? Right now, there's this, in the name of going fast, getting stuff done, people dig the hole deeper. And if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. The fastest way to get out of a hole is stop digging. But we still dig. And so this is what she was saying, which was, Scott, this sounds fantastic. Like, I love that we're going to do this stuff, whether it's fad or bad, I don't really care. But it doesn't matter if we don't actually get a culture of, to use your language, that we're always fad, that everything we touch, we try and make it better. A little bit, at least.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I guess we landed on it. We actually made the case for how to do bad and fad at the same time So long as you follow these rules.
And it's called had.
It's called had. We had the discussion and we landed on had.
I think there's one other thing to take from this, which is this is a lesson I've learned from it. Our non-technical stakeholders can sometimes at least open up our minds to things that maybe we didn't think about,
Yeah.
or at least, or cause us to think, is a strongly held belief I have. Why do I have that strongly held belief? Is it true? Is it just due to the scars of previous situations? And, be open-minded. It's
Yeah.
been an enjoyable thought process for me.
Yeah, totally. That sounds good. It sounds awesome.
Now I just got to get, every other technical leader I've talked to on this topic to change their mind.
Oh man, well, I am so happy that you brought this topic. It's got me thinking. It's a pretty cool concept.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is I talked to about, let's say 2 weeks ago, I was talking to the head of product about it. Maybe earlier this week, I was talking to our CEO, kind of having the same conversation. And I did just stop for a minute and I was like, they are smart people and they're asking me something. And they caused me to be reflective. And I'm glad that I caught myself and did that. And I hope I continue to do that.
Love it, man.
All right. Well, is that it for today?
That's it for today. Sounds like we hit some. We landed someplace real. We should. You know what? When you land, stop moving.
Land.
Land.
Yeah. So I got a new framework. It's called SHAD. It's called smash that subscribe button. Rad, rate, and review, and tell all your friends about us.
Love it.
All right.
All right.
Talk to you soon, Brad.
Bye.
This episode of How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast was edited by Saffron Hefta-Gaub. Our theme song was AI generated by Brad. Please follow us on all the social media platforms at How Many CTOs Pod. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, TikTok, and Patreon, or at our website at howmanyctospod.com. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks for listening.